So looking at the big picture for the 2020 Democratic primary elections from a progressive perspective, the one prominent fact is that almost all of the top contenders to win seats are women, and most of them are women of color. In fact, the only man that's in my current top 10 progressives to potentially win a seat is Greg Cesar, who's running in the Texas 35th District, who I talked about on the show in November, who's number one on that list. So in early December, the Biden Department of Justice sued the state of Texas, saying that the state's new redistricting maps dilute votes from people of color. The lawsuit asked the court to stop from using those maps and to make a new redistricting plans. Richard Penata, a poli-sci professor at the University of Texas at El Paso, stated that one of the most important questions when it comes to the kind of lawsuits, the timelines of how quickly you can get a federal judge to intervene. The next legal step is to decide a venue and assign a judge to the case, which hasn't happened yet. In the meantime, Texas is supposed to hold their primary on March 1st, 2 months before the next 11 states that hold their primaries in May. Votes are already being requested for absentee ballots. In the 28th District, Justice Democrats endorsed Jessica Cisneros, who is a 28-year-old immigration lawyer from Laredo, is back for a rematch against the awful Henry Cuellar, who is the only Democrat to vote against the Women's Health Protection Act, which would protect the federal right to an abortion. Cuellar is the fourth leading Democratic recipient of gas and oil money and is the leading recipient of private prison cash. He also voted twice to fund Trump's border wall. Cisneros supports Medicare for All, a Green New Deal, monthly $2,000 COVID checks for everyone, and the ProAct. In 2020, Cuellar only won by 3.6 against Cisneros. In the latest poll by Rasmussen, Cisneros is up by 1 point. The 28th District has been redrawn, has a large portion of the southwest Bexar County, which encompasses San Antonio, and is in the 28th District. Having voters in San Antonio city limits should help Cisneros. She won by a much smaller portion of Bexar County by a wide margins in 2020. But I'm a little bit concerned that Cuellar is going to outspend her in the San Antonio television market. Cisneros raised $421,000 in the third quarter of last year, which is the last quarter that was reported, and that was the highest total amount of any progressive challenger running in this cycle. Unfortunately, Cuellar raised $643,000 in the last quarter, and from the likes of Koch Industries and Northrop Grumman, and has $2.2 million.
And Nancy Pelosi, I would imagine, too. Honestly.
Yeah, she went down there the last time, right? Unbelievable. One other wrinkle to the race this time is there's a third candidate, Tanya Benavides, she only raised $22,000 in the third quarter, but in a Texas primary, if no candidate receives 50% of the vote, there's a runoff. Benavides' candidacy may force that runoff. So I have two questions to you, Sam. If you were forced to choose historically what the biggest story of 2021 is, would it be COVID or the Republicans' lurch into authoritarianism? And the second question is Sinema is scheduled to run again in 2024, and a couple of polls spaced out over several months say she's down by 20 points to multiple potential opponents. Will this boomerang effect have an impact on other conservative Democrats whose centrist and progressives blame for not passing Biden's agenda?
Well, are those the only two choices I get for the story of 2021?
Well, I mean, yeah, go ahead and expound on what you...
I honestly think that the real story of 2021, because the Republicans have been moving in that direction, as far as I'm concerned, for over a decade. And COVID, I think, was already here, 2020. I think the story of 2021 was Joe Biden's failure as a, supposedly the master tactician of the Senate, failure to read the room and figure out how to get this done. That's what I think the big story is. I think they blew it in the spring. They kept saying that they knew they had learned the lessons from the Obama administration, and they didn't. They didn't. And I think that the administration is now listening to all the wrong people. Larry Summers, that ilk. And I think I think this COVID thing is an example of the retreat. The other option they could have said is, no, we're not going to encourage people to go back to work and just hang in there. This is a good opportunity for us to pressure Joe Manchin and say, you're standing in the way of helping the economy. You're standing in the way of helping Americans. I mean, I really think that they blew it, 8 months ago. But I think that's the big story.
Do you think that would have changed Manchin? I mean, do you think he was?
I think
the fact that,
had they not,
I mean, he wants to run again in 2024, and he thinks he can win. I think they should have told him, "You can't win. Vote your conscience and help people." Because I don't think he's going to be able to win.
Well, I don't know if he thinks he's going to be able to win or not. I don't know if he thinks he's going to run again. But what I think they should have done is, instead of opening it up to Republicans in whatever it was, April, and trying to make it look like they were being bipartisan, they should have rammed that bill down their throats. Everybody's throats. Don't give Joe Manchin time to meet with no labels and have people organize their... don't give time for Joe Manchin to make a deal with Chuck Schumer or to sign some letter in July. No, pass the frickin' thing in May. That's when it should have passed. They should have had that bill ready to go, and they should have done it in May. They slow-walked it. They let the Republicans come in, and when the Republicans couldn't do it, they let Portman and Sinema develop it, and that was it. They should have just taken the bull by the horns and done it then. Because the more time you give people who are a back foot to right themselves. I mean, we were talking about Dr. Seuss when the COVID bill passed. Dr. Seuss. That was the only pushback. They should have done it right then. Not invite the Republicans in to sit with Biden. They should have just sucked it up and said, there's going to be a week or two where the Republicans say that Joe Biden shoved this down our throats. And that's it.
Do you think Biden was a bigger villain, or maybe assess that compared to Sinema and Manchin for this year? Do you think they're on equal footing?
No, it's not a comic book. It's not a comic book. It's about competence. It's about Joe Biden, just them not understanding the political moment. The Democratic leadership is just completely out of touch. Is acting upon the absolute wrong worldview of what our politics are like today. I mean, it's quite possible, and it's quite possible that, Joe Biden doesn't want this thing, and Nancy Pelosi doesn't want that thing, and Chuck Schumer doesn't want this thing that they pretend that they want, and this and that. But none of them wanted it to turn into this type of crap show that it is. None of them wanted to be this type of abject failure. And
go ahead.
And the way to avoid that would have been to not worry about bipartisanship, because no one gives a shit about bipartisanship. No one does. They may say it sometimes, but it is not what the voters act upon. That's just from a political standpoint. They should have taken the momentum they had, and they should have realized that we don't have a window. I mean, look, we were saying it on the show over and over again. It's the first 200 days. That's it. That's all you're going to have. It was obvious. But these are people who are they're ossified. Their view of politics is ossified. Is that even a word?
Do you feel that Manchin was serious about actually switching to the Republican Party? Because that's the only thing that I could see Biden being concerned about, because that way he can't appoint judges either, can't get a Supreme Court judge, and his agenda will die also.
I think that's a legitimate, I suppose that's a legitimate concern, but I don't know. I mean, but you wouldn't have given time. This is basic stuff. If you have the upper hand, you strike. This is literally like Sun Tzu stuff. It's that basic. This is stuff that you read aphorisms in the bathroom, in a book that's in the toilet, that people are just, you read when you're taking a poop. You have the upper hand, you strike. You don't go like, oh, we're going to hedge our bets and have people think that we're bipartisan. It's absurd. It was absurd. It was a failure. It's a failure.
If Biden told Manchin, like you said 8 months ago, like, Joe, there's no way you can win a Republican primary. So if you're thinking about actually, switching to the Republicans, good luck staying a senator,
My point is this, is that if you had moved the process forward, instead of inviting the Republicans in, just say, I'm sorry, Joe, I'm going forward here. You can either vote or not vote for it. Manchin would not have had time to be meeting with billionaires and millionaires in no labels to come up with a strategy of how we're going to do this. Right? Like, we heard the audio and all that stuff happened over the summer. like they just needed to just steamroll. And they failed. Do I think Kristen Sinema is going to provide a lesson for people? I think, if you're in a purple district, but, most people are not as tone deaf as she is. Mark Kelly knows what he's doing.
No, but to voters themselves. In other words, a lot of centrist voters are really pissed off at both of them for not passing, Build Back Better. And especially, when it was at its, $3.5 trillion. So are they going to... necessarily say, this is the conservatives are the ones that are taking, not passing the.
It is really hard. It is really hard to blame the other party. Like, look, they already passed the COVID relief bill, right? I don't know how you go out there and you blame conservatives at this point. Joe Biden said 6 months.
Joe Biden. Democrat.
Yeah, I know. I understand. But Joe Biden said 6 months. Like, his read on the Republican Party, his read on all of it was wrong. It was wrong. It's wrong.
Yeah, I agree. Totally.
All right, dude. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.